Okay, this is a video walking through a starter template for Nuxt, Firebase, Tailwind, and Ionic Framework and Capacitor to package it all up as a mobile app. I'll post a GitHub repo with all the source code so that you can use this as a way to start your mobile application using Nuxt. I've already created one with Supabase. I'll include the link in the description if you want to check out Supabase. But I thought, folks use Supabase, folks use Firebase. Let's create a separate video for the Firebase folks. So we're just going to copy these commands to get it started. We're going to call our project My Ionic Tailwind Firebase. So my let's change directory, cd my Ionic Tailwind Firebase. Let's do our npm install. Okay, and then we'll install all of the components. So let's install Tailwind first. Not components, all the modules. It's Tailwind. Ionic. And then for Vue, there's no official Nuxt module, but we can use VueFire. VueFire has a guide on where to go, a guide on how to integrate with Nuxt right here. And so that's what we're going to follow. So we need to install VueFire and Nuxt VueFire. And then let's also install, we are not using SSR because we're building an application that will be deployed to a mobile device, so there's no need for SSR, but we do need to install Firebase in Vue. Okay, so now let's open this up in Visual Studio Code. Let's just run it to make sure we have our basic configuration set. npm run dev. And we can take over this one, 192.168, but we are on port 302 because I have some other stuff running. All right, so we are in, our application's running. In this one, I'll do a little bit different than I did with the, let's stay consistent so that everyone's starting from the same place. So since we are using the Ionic components, so let's set that up first. So we need to go into our Nuxt config. And we've already installed this. Did I install Nuxt Ionic? Let's see. I thought I did. Yeah, I did. So let's update our modules in our Nuxt config. And actually, so we'll update our modules, and there's some other configuration that you can do to get access to specific options. So we'll come down here to the options. And what we want is, so it's Ionic. And then there's the options. We really just want CSS.utilities because there's some Ionic utilities that are helpful with styling. So let's set this to true. And all the other stuff will get installed by default because they all default. You can see they all default to true. So that should give us our basic Ionic setup. And to show that it's there, One thing is that we no longer need this because we're not going to use the app view. So what I usually do just to keep it there in case something changes later and I need it, I just change the name. And then let's create our pages folder because that will drive everything. Because we have file-based routing, so we're going to create our index.view. And then we're going to create our template. And you have to remember that when you're using Ionic, that Ionic expects every page to sit inside of an Ion page, and it expects the content to be inside of Ion content. So you need to make sure you set that up. So we're going to say Ion page, and then inside of your Ion page is your Ion content. And this is where the Ionic stuff, well, this is where, whether it's Ionic or Tailwind, this is where it goes. So we'll just put a button in here for now. And let's go back and see what we got. So let's refresh this. And we have our Ionic button, our Ion button. And let's take advantage of, let's format this, of one of the Ion utilities in their classes. So I can say Ion class equals Ion padding. So we get some padding around there. This is going to be our login button in the end. Will it be our login? No, this is index. This will be our logout. This will be our logout button in the end. And then down here, just to show the Ionic components, you don't have to use these because that's why we're loading in Tailwind. So we're going to say Ion card, and then Ion card content. So it's awesome because it does the automatic import of all of the components, all the Ion icons. You get everything that you need loaded in for you. And inside of here, this is where we will display the user. So let's just put that in there now. We'll display user here. So that's what we're going to display inside of that card. And let's put this into the look of what it will look like, well, sizing appropriate for a mobile device. So let's switch this over, set this to, so this is a Samsung Galaxy, and let's adjust it to fit the window. So this is kind of what your look will look like. But one of the advantages of using the Ionic look and feel is, like, clearly we need to have a heading. Well, not clearly, but in most cases you'll want a header. So you need to add your Ion header, and that will give you the header, but then inside of the header you would want your toolbar, your navigation buttons and things like that. So we add an Ion toolbar. Where is it? Ion toolbar. And then, so now you have the toolbar, and then here you're going to want to add your title. And this is our home page. So we get our home page where it's supposed to be. Now, one of the main reasons why you might want to leverage Ionic here is because you want it to manage a stack for you. Really, Ionic is giving you the look and feel of mobile. That's why you're driving with it. So let's add another page, and let's rename this, and we're going to call this About. And let's update this to About page. And there will be no logout. This is just going to be an About page. So we can take all this stuff out. But on the About page, when navigated to, because we're going to add, go back to my home, my index. And we have our logout button. And we have our About page. And in our About page, we can use the router link since we're using Ionic. And we say router link. And I just say About. And this should, where's my About? There's my page, about.view. Let's refresh. So that's my about page. So let's go back. But we need, so when I went to my about page, I want to get my back button. Also, you see how you have the nice navigation, which is what it would look like on an Android device. But since Ionic is managing the navigation for you, I can just come up in here and I can add my back button. Let's say Ion buttons. And we want this to slot start. And we want to use a back button. And Ionic will manage all that for you. So when I go to my about page, I get the button my back button, which is platform specific, which takes me back. And then if I switch here to, let's change this from a Galaxy back to an iPhone and refresh. You can see the UI changes to be iPhone specific. I log to my about page and I get the appropriate navigation, how it's swiped, and I also get my back button as I expected. Okay, so that's Ionic. Now let's move to another one of our plugins. Let's go to Tailwind. So we already did this Tailwind. Now, next we need to update the configuration. So let's just go in and add the plugin. So we'll go to our Nuxt config. We will add our plugin. It's loading all the default Tailwind stuff for us, so we don't need to do anything. This is just the basic setup is what we're focusing on here to get you started. So now everything's reset, and if I go back to my Nuxt application, let this kind of roll through and refresh everything. So now I should have access to Tailwind. So let's do this. Let's create a Tailwind page. So let's copy this. And let's rename this. So now we have our Tailwind CSS page. So we want to keep the header, the back button, and the title. But we're going to put some different content down in here. And what we'll also do is we'll come to our index page, and instead of using an Ion button, we'll just use a regular button. So we'll say button and Tailwind page. So that's our Tailwind page, but our button has no styling. Now I'm going to pull in a login page when we get to the login, and that's already been styled and everything. And so I'm just going to steal what that button class looks like. So if I copy that button class and bring it over here, where's my Tailwind button? So you can see I've now styled, let's pull this out of the way. I've now styled my button and I have Tailwind integrated into my mobile application. And so where does my Tailwind button go? I can't use the router link, but what I can do is I can do my setup, my script setup, lang equals ts, and we can do const router equals use router. So now I have my router, and then I can just do my click and say router push push ush slash Tailwind page. What did I call this page? Tailwind.css. Okay. And now I'm on my Tailwind page. And so let's go to our Tailwind page and let's go to Tailwind CSS. And we could do whatever we want in here and base it all off of Tailwind. So let's just bring in some more Tailwind style that I've already implemented just to kind of lay out the page. So we have our div, And then let's drop, let's just do this, div class, and we can say, I'm using the Visual Studio Code extension that gives me access to all of the Tailwind stuff, so I don't have to remember it off the top of my head. So let's get something interesting. Let's make my background orange. Let's go up here. Let's make my width full. And div let's just put some text in here so we can play with that also. And let's put a little bit of Tailwind class on this, class, text, and 2XL. And we could set our text white, we'll set our text color. We'll set text bold. It's not text, it's font bold, I believe. We'll set to semi-bold. And so you can see that we can style with Tailwind. Let me format this. And let's fill this out a little bit more. Let's do rounded, medium, and let's add some padding Y 8, and padding the X is 2. Sorry, padding X is 2. And so the whole idea is you can just see that we have a little bit of styling and it's being done with Tailwind. And let's see, what else can I do? A little bit of shadow there. Shadow. Do shadow XL. All right, so you can see the shadow there that we just added with that. And let's do one other thing. Let's see, can we add another button here on the bottom div? Let's take the button that we used before but apply a different style to it since we're on this page. So if I go back to my index view, let's copy this button class, go back to my Tailwind page, add some more to it. So we've got this button, but let's change all of this to follow my orange. We're going to change all the cyan to orange. All right, so this will be our go back button. Why didn't it center my text? Text center. There we go. So this will be our back button, and then we have to do like we did last time. Since it's not an Ionic button, we just have to do the click. And we could just pull the router, R-O-U-T-E-R, and just say go, we can just say back, I believe, back. Okay, so you can go back with the back button that I just created there, or you can go back with the button up top there. All right, so that's Tailwind, and so now the last one is Firebase. So let's go to our Nuxt Firebase install. We've already installed everything here, so the next thing to do is go into our configuration. So let's go to our Nuxt config file. We're going to add this VueFire. And then we need to set up some configuration. So we need to get the normal configuration that you would pull in with, let me make sure I'm getting everything right. When you set up your Ionic not Ionic, your Firebase configuration. So let's go up here up top, and we will say VueFire. VueFire missing Firebase config, so we need to add our configuration option here. All right, config. And here we need to set all of our API keys. All right, there we go, that's better. And so what will happen is these will all get pulled in from an environment file. And so I need to add a .env file where I'll put my Firebase keys in that come from creating a Firebase project. I'm not going to cover how to create a Firebase project. I'll add a link in the description below that can show you how to walk through it. Firebase does a way better job at describing it than I can ever do, so I'll just point you to them. And the other thing that we want to do is we want to make sure we have access to the auth module, so I can say auth, and we're going to set that to true. And now I'm going to pause the video as I create, so my .env file needs to go at the root here. So .env, and then I will set, let me make sure it's in the right folder. Yep, and then in here I will add my keys. So if we go back to, where is my Nuxt config? So I'll add a Firebase API key, a project key, and an app ID. Okay, now everything's added. Let's refresh. Let's shut this down and restart everything. And so now that it's restarted, I'm not doing, remember we need SSR, it needs to be false for Ionic apps, which I did not add, but you do want, obviously there's no server running. So we set this to false. And then we're not going to leverage any of this other stuff. And so now VueFire will automatically import all of the major stuff we need from VueFire. And we are going to start off with going back to our app, and we're going to go to index, and on the index page, ideally, like I said, if I have a user, I want to display my user here. Let's refresh this. And to get a user, we're provided with a composable. So const user use you can use Firebase auth, and then off of that we have access to functions, and let's use the get current user. And is that that's a property, so we can take this user object and we'll drop it in right here. And let's refresh this. And it looks like I don't have a user. Let's just check. So we'll just console log it to user. And we run it, so I don't have a user, so nothing's being displayed. Now, we need to be able to log in a user. And so let's take let's create a login page. Now, I've already created this page because I wanted to really show how to use styling. So I'm just going to drop in the template. So we've dropped in the template. Let's hop over to the login page so we can just see a look at what it looks like. Looks like I can't make that any smaller. So let's make this a little bigger. So we'll go here. Okay, top air. All right, so I need to create this credentials object. So let's do const. Actually, I've done this already, so let's just save some time. Where is this? So there's the credentials ref, and then I believe it's complaining because it needs a function called doSignIn. Const do sign in. This is going to be async equals All right, and so let's see, is that everything? So this is the basic layout for the sign-in. And so once again, one of the things that they encourage, if we go back to this documentation here and we go to VueFire, is, let's see, get started. Let's blow this up a bit. VueFire expects you to use the existing APIs from Firebase as much as possible. All right. So, for example, we need to log in, and I believe in Firebase it's called, is it sign in? Yes, sign in with email and password. So we're just going to use that function, and then we're going to get our auth. We can get our auth from VueFire, so I can say const auth equals use Firebase auth, and let's put auth in here, and then let's put it needs an email, so that'll be, let's just destructure those out, so we can say const email password equals credentials dot value. So that'll get us our email and password, and then we just use them here. Email, password, password. Auth is complaining, so we're just going to make this, we're just going to cast it as auth. And then we need to import that from Firebase auth. So now I think I can get some more space for this page. There we go. So this is a promise, so we need to wait for the response. And then we'll get our auth response, and then in our auth response should be a user, so let's do if auth response I need to put my wait in front here. If auth response.user, and then here's the information that I want on the user. So if I have a user, actually let's do it the other way around. If I don't have a user, then throw error no user, and otherwise let's do use router, and then what we will do is we will replace my login page with my index. And then let's handle my errors, so try catch and just once again from type, so let's do any as, actually I think I can cast it to error. Is that right? So now let's see if we got this going. So let's refresh. And so invalid auth email, clearly looks like I didn't enter any credentials, but let's enter, I think I know what a user is here. So I didn't find that user, so what is it? Aaron, hold on, let me find out what my user is. think let's try +2. All right, so it signed me in. It's saying no path for /index. So the easiest thing to do is to come inside of my index, and I'm able to I can define some page metadata to create an alias. I can define some page metadata to create an alias for this page. So just do this. And in here, alias. And let's refresh. Oh, I guess it just needed to refresh. It must have been rebuilding. It just needed to refresh. All right, so here's my user. Clearly, I don't want to dump all that, so let's just dump user.email to confirm that we actually have a user, and that should be sufficient. So, and then did we connect the logout? There's our logout button. To log out, and then let's add our function down here. Const do logout equals async 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 arrow function. There are no parameters, and we will just call I think we can use Firebase Auth again. Cap lux. And then from there, sign out. And do an await. And then use router. I already have router, so router replace login. Let's refresh our page again. We have no user at this time. So let's fix that issue. So basically, we don't want the user to be able to come to this page unless they have a user. So the way to fix that is we add our middleware, and in our middleware, we want all of our pages to go through this auth check. So we'll add our auth as our middleware, and let's add this to all of our private pages. So we have it on index. We should add it to our about page. We don't need a alias for this page. Let's copy all this. I don't think I have anything on my, actually I do have some script in my Tailwind page, so we'll just take this and we'll go to our Tailwind page. Let's scroll down. Actually, I don't. Back. We'll take the whole script, drop it here in our Tailwind. So basically what should happen is these pages will confirm, let's see, did I add my auth yet? No, I did not, so that's why it's complaining. Let me add my middleware folder. You need a middleware folder to add middleware. So let's pull this down, make sure it's at the top level. Move. And then for middleware, let's see what they got for us inside of here. Let's go back to Nuxt authentication. So here they talk about the authentication, but here's their suggestion on how to create your middleware. So we'll just follow their lead until we find out if it doesn't work. So add middleware, auth.ts, and let's drop that in here. And so now we have our middleware. So basically it's going to try to get a user. If it doesn't have a user, it will navigate to login. Otherwise, it'll just go to whatever its redirect path is. So let's go back here to our code. And let's just, so now we're at index, and we're going to try to go start the app. And we have a user, so it took us to this page. But now let's log out. And Why did it not? It says it redirected me to login. Let's see what's going on login. Uncaught promise, cannot read, undefined. So let's see what's happening on logout. So my index page, reading class list of is view viewable, Ionic view. Did I wrap all my pages? So that's a page. Current user, replace, router replace, login. Oh. So the problem is that what it's doing is it's using Ionic's router, and Ionic's router can only appropriately route to Ionic pages. And as you can see, I did not wrap this page in an Ion page. So that is why this is failing. So I need to add Ion page. Now let's go down here to the bottom and just wrap this in an Ion page. And then it's also complaining because Ion page expects its content to be side of an Ion content. So let me add my Ion content and put that down here. So even though it's inside of a page and inside of content, it is still all completely styled with Tailwind. You don't have to use Ionic components. So it's in. I don't think I need all this padding on the top anymore. Let's see, can I take it all out? Yeah, that looks good enough. Okay, so do I still have a logged in user? No logged in user, so let's log in. I go to my login page, and now let's log out, and I navigate back to my home page. And I cannot get to my other pages, so let's try to go to About, because they're protected by the middleware. So in the end, what we're trying to do is actually build a mobile application. And so for a mobile application, we need to install Capacitor. So I strongly encourage that you install this Ionic Visual Studio Code extension. I will put a link in the video description, but what it does is instead of, where is this doc on? Installation, where did I put the Ionic Nuxt? Yeah. Instead of going through this process of enabling Capacitor by just entering all these CLI commands, you could use this extension and it will just make your life a lot easier. So let's stop this from running my website. And I can just click Add Capacitor, and it will add Capacitor to the project. Also, it gives you recommendations for updates and all sorts of other things that you need. So I think this is probably that same node error. Yeah, everything will still run fine, but I do need to update that on my device. On my computer. So now Capacitor is integrated. I am running on iOS. So for now, I will add iOS to my project. So now it's adding iOS to my project. iOS has been added to my project. Now, before you attempt to run on any of the platforms, you have to actually build the application. Now, if you don't change anything in your configuration and you just hit build, I'll show you the errors so that if you run into them, you'll know why. So I've just hit build. It's building for production. But it's complaining that it cannot find the assets web directory. And that is because by default, when you install Capacitor, Capacitor doesn't know where to look for basically the web assets that it wants to package. So if we go to let's go back to our files and we go to Capacitor config, you can see it's saying web directory. There's no www file, so that's why this build is failing. So what I have found is the best solution is to modify my package.json. And instead of this Ionic build running build, I want it to run generate. So I change this to generate. And let's see what happens differently. If I now go back to Ionic and press build. Why did I not save my capacitor config? Where's my capacitor config? Oh, I did not change. Actually, I'm showing you what's happening. That's why I didn't change it. But you could see, okay, that now it's generated all the files that I need, including the indexed HTML. It's put them in public output. But it also has created this dis folder. If you look at public output, these are all this is the HTML that I need. If you look in the dis folder, the dis folder is really just redirecting, I believe, yes, to public output. So I changed my web directory here to dist. And then now I'm going to just come back here and run iOS. And I'm going to select my iPhone. And now let's let this run. Capacitor is building everything, packaging it up, and now it is going to try to fire up. Now it's going to try and fire up my iOS simulator. So let's see what we got. Where is my simulator? Here's my simulator. Okay, and we're running into an error. Now, I believe this error is related to a capacitor storage error that has been documented with Ionic. That has been documented with Ionic. And so there's some changes that you need to make to initializing your application to get this to work on device. So the issue we're running into is, is that when you're running on Ionic, when you're running a capacitor, you have to set the persistence when you initialize the authentication. So that requires a few changes to your application to make it work appropriately. So here are the changes. So what I needed to do was, for one, in your Nuxt configuration, you do not want to use auth from VueFire. So you need to set auth to false, because we're going to manage the auth object that you get from Firebase ourselves. So set auth to false. That must be done. 2, you cannot call the use Firebase auth composable that's provided to you from the module. So you need to roll your own. I don't need this. We can delete this one. So basically, what I did is I rolled my own. I called it use FB auth. And so what this does is I always initialize my auth with IndexedDB for local persistence, either way. Now, there are some people who say that you should only do this on native, and in fact, that's what they've suggested here. They've suggested here that you check the platform, and if it's native, then you return it. Otherwise, you do the get auth. I have not found the problem with just always returning, initializing it with persistence. So that's what I'm doing now. If someone runs into problems, let me know. I've checked this on both my web solution and on my native solution. So now I've created my own composable to get the authentication object from Firebase. And so what you need to do then is every place where you were calling the authentication object, you need to now use this new composable. So if we look at my index view, to get the current user, I'm now using my own composable. And if you look in the login view, when I need the auth object, I'm using my own composable. And that's what I'm passing in to all of my authentication calls. So to sign up with email and password is using my authentication. And then if you go back to index for the logout, once again, we're using my composable to get the authentication object. And so once you do all of that and you rebuild everything, so I go back, I'll build my project, Let's get my... Well, first of all, I mean, I've ran it already, so you can see we've gotten further than we did before. We're actually at the login page, which we were unable to get to before. But let's just run it all, and I can walk through it with you. So I've just rebuilt, and now let's start my app up. And now, +2, clearly, and then password. And then we sign in, and I got my user, and everything else is working just as it was before. We have our Tailwind page, and then I can log out. So I'm going to wrap it here. Hopefully you found this helpful. Please let me know if you want to see more around integrating Ionic, Tailwind, Firebase, and Nuxt. Leave a comment below. There'll be a link in the description to access to the source code. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you, and have a good one.